And now, Good Mike Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
There's just something warm and fuzzy about a Saturday wingy, isn't there? Gotta love them Saturday wingies. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Happy weekend to you, and welcome back to the channel. This is the first time I've been up here in podcast form in about a week, and we have a lot to catch up on, a lot of wrestling news. We're going to kind of breeze through the highlights of this week's TV, Raw, Smackdown, Dynamite, Rampage. We got Collision coming up tonight. We have Monday's Raw coming up on Monday. We got a couple of pay-per-views and big TV shows on the horizon. A lot of wrestling news, a lot more CM Punk drama to get into. We have to congratulate Gunther. We got to do all sorts of stuff in this episode. So that's what we are here to do today. Welcome. Hope you guys had a great week, and hopefully you're having a great weekend so far. Welcome to everybody that's already here hanging out in the chat. And I just want to do a quick sound check there. We are looking good and good. So on the menu today, here's what we're going to get into. We, of course, have to open up with the latest in the CM Punk AEW Elite drama BS nonsense that's going on. We had Ace Steel released this week, so we'll elaborate a little bit more on that. And we'll talk about these potential meetings that was supposed to happen between Punk and the Elite, and the report of the Elite wanting to wait 6 months of having no CM Punk drama before they do a meeting. All of those little details we will discuss. We will talk about that AEW Forbes valuation. We'll talk about LA Knight's new potential long-term contract that he may or may not have signed. We had the big superstar spectacle in India yesterday. That was not a televised event. It was just for the crowd there. We'll touch on that because Becky Lynch was unable to make the show. We will pay our respects to General Adnan as well, who passed away this week on my birthday. We'll talk about the Authors of Pain. And like I said, we will backtrack and just kind of talk about the highlights of Raw this week and NXT. A couple of big tidbits of news coming out of NXT. Last night's SmackDown was rather weak, but we did have some interesting segments on SmackDown as well, including something that might set up some War Games Survivor Series stuff, seeing the Judgment Day kind of interacting with Lashley's crew and potentially the Bloodline as well. So that's kind of interesting. We were here on Wednesday. I did a big birthday stream, first time in 13 years on YouTube that I've ever done a live stream on my birthday before. We watched AEW Dynamite together, just hung out, very casual stream. You guys were kind enough to come hang out with me. I invited y'all over for my birthday. You came over, we partied. It was a great time. Thanks to everyone who was here on Wednesday. But we will talk a little bit about Dynamite, including especially the MJF and Samoa Joe segment, which was really good, and the Swerve Strickland and Hangman Page segment, which was also really good. We're also in the middle of the Grand Slam World Title Eliminator. We'll talk about the results of that. And last night's Rampage. Normally we don't talk about Rampage, but we had some Eliminator matches on there, and we had a Santana segment that was like a pre-tape where he's talking about his return to the company that sparked a tweet exchange between Santana and Ortiz just within the last few hours. And I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a feud between the two, because if not, this is really unfortunate what's happened to the relationship between these guys. So I'm hoping this is a work. That's the best case scenario here. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, like I said, we will preview tonight's Collision, and we will discuss anything else that you guys want to discuss. So, because today is just going to be kind of a general recap of the week. We might not hit everything, but we're going to try to hit most of it. We have another big weekend planned as usual. Tomorrow night, we are back for our classic pay-per-view watch-alongs. We've missed the last 2 Sundays due to All In and All Out. So tomorrow, we're going to be back with Unforgiven 2006. We talked about this on the birthday stream on Wednesday, right at the end of the episode. I was like, yo, we got to come up with a watch-along for this Sunday. Let me know your suggestions. And a couple people threw out Unforgiven 2006. And a bunch of people was like, yes, do that one. So I was like, cool, consider it done. The chat has spoken. So we are doing Unforgiven 2006 tomorrow. The link for that is up on the channel already. Just click right over on that Good Mike Work Commentaries little link there. You'll find my page right at the top of it. Next to this video, you will see tomorrow's link for our watch along. And the plan as of right now, anyway, is to also be up here on Monday night after Raw to do another Winged Eagle podcast discussing tonight's Collision, discussing the results of Raw. If for any reason tonight's Collision is the worst show ever and they have absolutely dick planned for Monday Night Raw, maybe we'll skip it, but I think I'm going to plan to be up here on Monday as well so we can hang out. And for all of you great channel members and Patreon supporters, I know I keep saying this, but I have a lot of videos that I'm working on editing right now. So you're kind of going to wind up getting some rapid fire on the Patreon page and the channel member content, because I'm trying to knock out a bunch of things at once. And then once I do, I'm probably just going to hit you with it. So just keep a lookout for that. And I just need to find out when we can resume our Saturday night's main event watch-alongs, and Elizabeth is going to sit in on a watch-along with me too once we figure that out. The problem is now we are into football season, so if any of you have plans to watch college football today and you stopped that to watch me, thank you for being here. Same goes with tomorrow night. There will be a Sunday night game. We'll have it on the TV. We've been doing that the last couple of years. During football season, we'll watch our pay-per-view, but we will also eyeball any big NFL game that might be going on, have some cold ones, hang out together. That will be the plan tomorrow. But I don't want to take away too much from football time for those of you who follow that. So in terms of some of these special members only watch alongs, I'm not sure if the weekend is really going to be the best time for that. Might be better to do it during the weekday, but I'm going to be working on a lot of that tonight. So thank you to everyone who is a channel member or a supporter on Patreon. Thank you very much. If you've been with us longer, they're 6 months or longer, you will see your name scroll across there on the ticker. Thank you very much for so many of you that have been with us ever since we began doing the memberships on the channel. You guys can also help me out by smashing that thumbs up button right now for me. Help me get those likes up, because that's a pretty low number. And if you are not subscribed, please do so. We are on the road to 40,000 subscribers. We're 700 and change away from getting there. We should get there pretty soon. So please smash the thumbs up, and smash the subscribe button if you don't mind, and hang out with us and stick around, because this is a fun channel. Anyway, that should do it for the pleasantries or my programming notes. Let me say hi to whoever is here in the chat so far, like the channel members, for example, Red Raven Rucker, Jay Lambo, Tatanani is here. We also have Nick Musser in the house as well. We got Isaac, we got Ian Dunn, we got the Juliet, right on, and Jordan Carg. Thank you for the belated birthday wish. My ass turned 46 years old on Wednesday. I know, halfway to 92. Don't remind me. Don't fucking remind me. Good to see Mike Rouse as well. We have John Woodmass. Nice name, John Woodmass. I'm down. I'm down with that name. You bank with Colt Cabana's mother, right on. I think maybe Jack Perry might have a checking account with his mom too. I'm not sure. A. Dupree, good to see you. Yeah, the CM Punk nonsense is one of the most entertaining things about wrestling right now. Pour one out for the snake rattle and roll. Thank you, Big MGM. Yes, we are going to be talking about Gunther. What a great birthday present. I was so happy to see that record finally broken. I want to say hello to my boy, Clyde Wendell Slater as well, who's hanging out. Afternoon, Greg, and everyone in the chat. Hope your weekend is going well too, Clyde. Thank you for being here as always. And if you can get to his channel from here, please check out Clyde's stuff. Good guy over there. Great supporter of the channel. CR Music Videos. Good to see you. MJ Parker in the house as well. And anybody else that is chiming in as we are talking here. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And again, thumbs up button, like button would be appreciated. All right, let's start with some wrestling news. And of course, as has been the case for the better part of a year, over a year now, on this channel, we have to start with CM Punk. As we all know, CM Punk was released last week from AEW, and that was a big bombshell drop over the weekend, and we're still not really finished processing that. I think it's only been a week, right? I believe it was 1 week ago today, right, that it was announced right ahead of Collision that CM Punk was in fact released. So it's been a full week now. We've had some more information come out about the situation, and it's a lot. So I'm only going to talk about the highlights. One of those reports was about a proposed meeting or a planned meeting that was supposedly going to take place between CM Punk and the members of the Elite, and I think they had this set up for Georgia. And there was a report, I think it originally came from House of Wrestling, that the meeting was canceled. And this cancellation of the meeting, according to Punk's side or Punk's camp, was one of the things that really added to his frustrations, which might have contributed to things reaching a boiling point or boiling over once Jack Perry did what he did at All In. So that was kind of the message sent out from Punk's camp. Meltzer had some things to say about it as well. He had a lot to say, but to break down just the bare bones of it here, he said there was never really a meeting plan, that the Elite were never approached about a meeting because management felt like the Elite would decline, as if they wouldn't want anything to do with it. And we have heard that it feels like the reports that we've heard in the past year have mostly said that Punk has been more open to meeting and working things out than the Elite. So we don't really know yet. He also mentioned something about a legal letter that was sent to AEW about a perceived shot taken at CM Punk on being the Elite. Now, this is not the recent one that we just saw with Kenny drinking the Pepsi, but it wasn't Pepsi. It was just a water bottle with some brown shit in it. And apparently before All In, something happened on being the Elite that had nothing to do with Punk, but might have been perceived as a shot. Long-running gag. I haven't watched Being the Elite other than a few highlights in quite some time. But there was something going on with Matt Jackson, an endorsement deal, or whatever that bit was, or the skit was. It might have been taken out of context by Punk, and then a letter was sent and all that nonsense. I also saw Kenny drinking the Pepsi. Everybody's like, oh, Kenny drank a Pepsi on being the Elite, but this is something he does a lot. He grabs the water bottle and squeezes it in his mouth. He's done the same thing a few times. The bottle did have brown liquid in it, which I think a lot of fans took as Pepsi and took as a shot at Punk, and of course got butthurt about it or whatever. I barely paid any attention to that at all. I do not give a shit what water bottles the Elite drink out of. Do not care. But these are little tiny shots that apparently Punk earlier on, a couple of months ago, might have felt like was violating the terms of these guys working together. They can't publicly talk bad about the other, although it hasn't really stopped CM Punk. Completely unsolicited rant on Hangman Page after Collision a few weeks ago, and the counterfeit buck stuff. So it's not like one side's behaving themselves and the other side is shooting off of the mouth. They're both being assholes here. So it's kind of weird that, Punk would find these things offensive when he's doing the same shit, man. So anyway, that's a lot of nonsense there. And then there's also the story in this, and I think this came from Meltzer as well, that the Elite supposedly wanted and were requiring that they had 6 months of CM Punk free drama. Like there was no incidents, no issues, nothing happened with CM Punk in 6 months. Then they were willing to sit down and talk to him, and I guess they are EVPs, so maybe they have a little bit more pull than others, but I don't understand why it would be up to the Elite to put a timetable on when they're going to meet with CM Punk. What, are you going to have a little calendar and mark off the days or something? And again, this is when a lot of this does point back to Tony Khan, to where he, at the end of the day, whether these guys are EVPs or not, he still is the boss. He still is their boss. And anything that he says should go, no matter what. They should have nothing in their contracts that would allow them to veto any decision that Tony Khan makes. Tony Khan needs to maintain complete control here. So as long as that's the case, it really does look bad on him why he wasn't able just to pull these guys together and says, I don't care if you guys want a meeting or not. We're having one. And it's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Be there or be fucking fired. And that has never really happened. And because of Tony Khan walking around these guys on eggshells and trying to have everybody coexist without a resolution, that's why we are in the situation that we're in now, with Punk being gone, and it's a mess. And for Tony Khan to actually, come out publicly and say, for the first time ever, I felt like my safety and my life was in danger. Punk probably lunged at him and says, I'm going to fucking kill you, because there's a lot of questions and speculation regarding that lunge. And most people believe the lunge was a little more serious than just a lunge. It might have been, it reminds me, in my head anyway, I envision, remember when Bret Hart got mad? It was the summer of 97. Shawn had just come back after the hair pulling fight and announced that he was going to be the special referee at SummerSlam against Bret and Taker. And Bret finds this out on Raw, and he comes down and he grabs Vince. Remember, he grabbed him over, because Vince was still on commentary, and grabbed him and pulled his shirt over his head and just kind of or no, maybe Vince pulled Brett's shirt over his head. I don't know, but they started just like grabbing at each other, and Brett was like tearing at Vince. And I imagine something like that. It might have just been frustrations boiling over, and Punk actually lunged at his boss. And if that is what happened, if we ever get video confirmation of any of this, honestly, guys, that trumps everything. I've always said that the Punk tirade at All Out last year was the worst offense that anybody has created in all of this. And if Punk actually lunged at his boss and tried to physically put his hands on Tony Khan, and that does wind up being confirmed and proven, then really it doesn't really matter who's right and who's wrong at this point. If you lunge at your boss and threaten him in any way, regardless of how frustrated you are, or regardless of how much the elite has pissed you off, or how much they're drinking Pepsis on being the elite, it doesn't matter. You lunge at your boss and you threaten your boss, you are fired and you are never coming back. Which is interesting because in this same report, Meltzer at the end of this throws in this last bit about if it's determined that CM Punk is not going to go back to WWE and they don't want anything to do with him, it's not out of the realm of possibility that AEW could bring CM Punk back. And that blows my mind. Now, I know in wrestling, we never can say never, ever. And it would be silly to even say that in this instance. But I think when you think about what led to Punk's ultimate termination and why Punk probably doesn't have any sort of legal leg to stand on here, you know, if Punk felt like he was wrongfully terminated or whatever, he would take these things into court because CM Punk loves to go to court. So that lends credibility to the story about Punk lunging at Tony Khan in some capacity, you know, and if he did that, you know, Tony Khan, with the advice of his legal people and all the people in his apparently $2 billion company telling him, oh yeah, you absolutely have to let him go. And he's, you know, we have it right there on video. He lunged after you and said, I'm going to fucking kill you. You're fired. There's no way out of that. There's no way to talk your way out of that or to not make that as bad as it sounds. So if that in fact happened, and I don't think we will ever see this footage, but if we hear that the footage was reviewed and it was determined that Punk lunged or whatever, then he's going to be let go. And the idea of him coming back is crazy. Now, granted, we've seen plenty of fallouts before. We've seen ugly situations and ugly endings, especially in WWE, hatchets being buried and things like that. We've seen it happen before. But in this case, it's a little different since there does seem to be a legal aspect to it. And you know, with lawyers, and when Tony Khan goes on cable television and says, my life and safety was threatened, you don't just say that, you know, and to the fans, like, oh, he's lying. Do you really think that this man and his lawyers and his legal representation and all of the cameras that were around at that time filming this, at least one, probably more, filming this entire incident taking place, that his lawyers would say, go out there and lie when they know the lie can be disproven? What's more likely? That it actually happened, or that Tony Khan has decided to lie knowing that he can get fucked over by this in the future? I think it's probably likely that CM Punk did some lunging, did some a Pepsi lunge at Tony Khan. It sounds like that's probably what went down. So if Meltzer thinks that Punk can go back in the future, all I can say to that is LOL WTF, because how in the hell can you make that distinction? I mean, if AEW or WWE wants nothing to do with Punk, there's been talk of him appearing in Impact. Maybe Punk does what Moxley does and just goes out there and has a little fun and just takes some indie bookings, gives them a big rub and brings a big name in there and takes a little bit, you know, takes some paydays and makes the rounds. Who knows? He could do that. But if he wants to try to squeeze another couple of years out of wrestling before his body completely breaks down, then he either has to go to WWE or stay in AEW. But I just don't know how, if you weren't able to have anything resolved in a year when you had every opportunity to, because Punk was injured. It's not like he was on TV trying to coexist with these guys. He was home nursing an injury, rehabbing. If you couldn't get these guys together to hash things out during that, then how are you going to be able to do it now? How are the elite who are EVPs in the company going to come around? Apparently these guys have not even wanted to talk to Punk, and you're going to get them to change their mind. And now, granted, it's not going to be up to them. It's going to be up to Tony Khan. But if Tony Khan goes to them and says, "Hey, I'm going to bring CM Punk back," and they're like, "Oh, you got to be fucking kidding me." Like, well, no, I got to do it. Might be giving us a shot in the arm or whatever. I just cannot see a scenario where that would be a reality or where that would be a possibility. I feel like Punk is gone and gone for good based on that. But we've said that about a lot of people in the past. I never thought Hogan or the NWO or even Brett, for that matter, would ever come back into WWE, and everybody did. We've seen Austin have a walk out on WWE twice and come back, but usually anything physical that happens, they never brought Nails back in or anybody that's actually physically assaulted Vince, and the only people that we really know of that has physically assaulted Vince has been Nails and Bret Hart, and Bret Hart was, of course, many, many, many years later brought back in. But I think with CM Punk, where he lands, it just depends. Him going back to WWE would be crazy, but I feel like now in the system that's in place in WWE, he would, there would be more of a leash on him. He wouldn't be able to disrupt the way he disrupted in AEW. So it's the situation is still as juicy as ever and still no real resolution. And that's the thing from AEW side, is that it's going to be hard to ever really truly move on from this if you're them until you get some sort of resolution with CM Punk in terms of what he's going to do, and most importantly, what he's going to say. And a lot of people have been wondering, when exactly is CM Punk going to have some sort of response? Can he respond? Is he allowed to respond? What were the terms of the release? Is there a no-compete? Is there an NDA? We don't really know that stuff yet. Now, Ace Steel this week was also released again from the company. He was fired after Brawl Out, but he was brought back as part of the agreement with CM Punk returning. So once Punk was let go, the writing was kind of on the wall here with Ace Steel. So him being let go from the company is really not that much of a surprise. If you're Ace Steel, would you even want to be there at this point if you want to remain loyal to your friend? You know what I mean? So him being gone is not that much of a surprise. I think PW Insider reported that first. But when you think about Ace Steel, I'm curious because there's a possibility with Punk's termination that, and the fragility of the whole situation with the elite and everything that went on in the last year, maybe there are some restrictions because of that about what Punk can and cannot say. There might be some sort of an agreement still that remains binding that says he cannot publicly trash them or anything like that. We don't know if that's the case or not, but he might have that. Ace Steel, however, might not. And what if Ace Steel, because he doesn't have the big time money contract, he doesn't have two contracts like Punk, who's got a wrestler contract and an employee contract. Ace Steel, a much smaller contract, much lower level employee than CM Punk. Is he going to have those same restrictions? Can he go on a podcast tomorrow and just lay out everything that he knows about this? I hope he can, because I want to fucking listen to that. And same thing with CM Punk. Now, let's just say Punk has been terminated and there's nothing legally that would prevent him from publicly giving his side of the story. Let's say that hypothetically that's where we're at. Then if that's the case and I'm Tony Khan, I'm kind of just going to be on eggshells until Punk makes his response. In WWE, it took him like 8 months. He dropped that big Colt Cabana podcast on like Thanksgiving Day, right? And it set the wrestling world on fire. I mean, it was the biggest thing to hit wrestling news-wise in quite a while. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. It was a 2-hour bitch fest on everything that went wrong in WWE and all of the problems that he had. And a lot of fans, when we listened to that, he painted WWE in a very, very bad light and made them look shitty. And in retrospect now, in hindsight, we see that Punk might have overstepped some lines in some of his descriptions there. But the vibe and the tone of that podcast was was very much him unloading a lot of years of frustration. And if he's able to do this again, I'm a little worried if I'm AEW when this is going to happen. And if I'm in CM Punk's shoes, I'm probably going to do something like record a podcast with somebody and then drop it on the morning of Grand Slam, on the morning of that new Wrestle Dream pay-per-view that's coming up, on the morning of Full Gear, or on some sort of big day for AEW. That's when I'm dropping the podcast. And it's going to make everybody forget about the pay-per-view coming up, the matches we're going to see. It's going to be all about listening to CM Punk's side of it. So he's in a great position leverage-wise to stick it to them if he wants to. But you would think that as many problems as he has with the Elite and whatever's going on there, it's the problem with those guys. He still has supporters in the company. He still has friends in the company. And you would think that somebody in their mid to late 40s, a veteran, and someone with the experience and maturity level that someone of his age should have, that how does that make me look? To go and just try to trash and try to fuck up business of a company that still does employ a lot of my friends and a lot of people I care about and a lot of people I don't have issues with, like the Bryan Danielsons and the FTRs and a lot of other good people there that I got no problems with. He's cool with MJF and Adam Cole and a lot of other big stars there. We've never heard about any problems with Punk and those guys. Even Miro, apparently he's pretty cool with. So, you could, harming the company also harms them, and takes away from them. Imagine if Bryan Danielson's got some big match. Bryan Danielson, whose body is already on, its last legs, it feels like. And every Bryan Danielson pay-per-view match that we get as fans, we should cherish. And imagine if he's got a big one coming up and then Punk drops that podcast, and then, Danielson has to put more miles wear and tear on his body in a match that nobody's going to fucking remember because CM Punk went apeshit on a podcast 3 hours earlier. So I feel like Punk is in the driver's seat with that unless, again, there's some NDA that we don't know about or if there's some other legal terms that's going to prevent him from doing that. And if that's the case, then AEW can rest easy and move forward and go on with their plans and not have to think about it again. But if there is a Punk response coming, which I'm sure there is, the only thing that would stop him is something legally. If Punk's allowed to respond, he's going to respond. But you have to think about a lot of stuff, though. How crazy do you want to go? In Punk's head, does he have aspirations to return to WWE? Is that something that he feels like he wants to do, to go back to WWE? Well, if it is, I would be worried if I was CM Punk about how I would look in WWE's eyes if I go on a 2-hour bitch fest on a podcast, ripping AEW apart, its management, its wrestlers, its owner, all of that stuff. Would I want to do that if I'm trying to get back into that company? Because that might bring back some bad memories for them from 2014 when I did the same thing to them on Colt Cabana's podcast. Punk was very harsh, very harsh. Did anybody take an F-bomb tally on that podcast? I would assume it ranges in the hundreds. And if he were to do the exact same thing for AEW, I'm sure WWE is laughing on the sidelines, but if they want to do business with Punk and they see that and they're like, oh yeah, he's just doing to them what he did to us 10 years ago, 9 years ago now. So do we really want that back? Do we want to bring that toxicity back here? Even if he's right about what he's saying, that might bring back bad memories. So with Punk, maybe he's weighing all of that. Well, I don't want to just completely go nuts and then make myself look like a bitter, angry, pants-shitting child to the company that I'm trying to get rehired by. So he's got to take all of that stuff into consideration. We just don't know. We don't even know if he's able to speak. And if he is he going to speak? What's he going to say? And where is he going to say this? Because 9 years ago, Colt Cabana was beginning the podcast movement that we see now. Now there's a million other choices for podcasts out there. And I got to check my email to see if Punk is hitting me up to come on this channel. He probably is. I probably missed his email, and now he's chosen someone else, which is a shame. But I never checked my email. It's my fault. So we'll see what goes on in the future with Punk and with Ace Steel. If either one of them have anything to say in the future, that's going to be interesting. But yeah, that's the latest on Punk, the Elite, AEW, and the never-ending drama that surrounds this entire situation. And AEW, like I said, I don't think is really going to ever be able to get into full moving forward mode until they figure out, or we as fans figure out, and we all figure out what Punk's future is going to be. Where is he going to work, if anywhere, and is he going to say anything? And in my mind, until one of those two things happens, it's going to be hard for AEW as a company to truly move forward, because they need full-on closure on this. There needs to be some sort of door that's closed that signifies the end of it. You know, even if there's lingering bad feelings until the end of time, something needs to happen to where, from a fan's perspective or from a pro wrestling perspective, there really shouldn't be any more to talk about. You know, that's kind of where I'm hoping this situation gets to at some point, to where we don't have to come up here on a Saturday or a Monday anymore and say, oh, we have to, you know, talk about the latest here. There's really not going to be much else to say. But there's probably going to be a lot to say until we get Punk going somewhere, doing something, saying something. We will have to wait and see. So there you go. There's the latest on CM Punk and the Elite. I would really appreciate some thumbs up. Man, that's a low like count, but I trust you guys to help me out and get those up a little higher. I want to thank Spectre for that $5 drop a minute ago. Hope you're having a good weekend. Isn't it funny that Punk ruins another pay-per-view weekend, then they throw a title on Mox, almost like he's their ace. Yeah, you know, Moxley stepping up in that main event spot, and now he's the international champion. I do like that AEW tries to elevate the value of titles. I feel like the international title is, you know, leapfrogged the TNT title, and I thought the TNT title was a pretty awesome title there for a while. So it does kind of remind you of what happened last year with Moxley kind of stepping in. And he is their ace. I think he's a very important piece to the company, and I think Tony Khan realizes that as well. Have Punk on Jim Cornette's podcast? No, probably not a good idea. Plus, you know, he should be on a podcast with someone, you know, like with a co-host or something. Like I mentioned Matt Kuhn earlier on. He shouldn't be on somebody like Cornette, who's the focal point of their own podcast. He needs to be on there with like the co-host guy or something. You know, have John Alba do it, or Sean Oliver, or somebody like that, or Matt Kuhn. Something like that, to where we can hear Punk's side of things whenever that happens. Speaking of AEW, here's something interesting. Mike Ozanian, the assistant managing editor of Forbes Media and co-host and managing editor of Forbes Sports Money, recently did a study on AEW's business as of late, and he valued the company at more than $2 billion. Now, that sparked a lot of debate on social media from fragile boys who stock the shelves at their local Walgreens, are somehow business experts, and are telling us why that $2 billion number is wrong. And again, much like the ticket sales, this is, you know, in the ticket announcements for AEW, this is not really a big deal to me. They sold a ton of tickets for All In. They should be proud of that. Their valuation here, regardless of how accurate or not accurate it is, AEW is worth money. You'd have to be a fool to not think it's worth money because of what they've been able to do and the brand that they've been able to build in the last 4 years. I'm no business expert either. Do I believe the 2 billion number? I don't care. You know, it just blows my mind how many people get so uppity, so antsy about any sort of positive metric about AEW, ticket sales or attendance, and they're just coming out of the woodwork to tear it down. I'm like, who didn't hug you? I just don't understand, you know, and focusing so much energy of trying to make AEW's value less than 2 billion. Why not just focus that energy on making your value worth more than a jar of expired mayonnaise? Because it's a waste of time to get this butthurt over shit like this. So debate away, Walgreens workers, on whether or not this Forbes article is legit. It's all based in tribalism, and that's it. And you guys fucking know it. So maybe they're worth 2 billion. Maybe they're worth 1 billion. Greg doesn't give a fuck. So anyway, I thought I'd mention that. Let's talk about LA Knight. LA Knight. I love him. Love LA Knight. There has been some talk about a contract extension that's been in the works for him for quite some time. Now, Fightful Select and PW Insider both had reports on this week. Neither one really confirming that a contract has been signed, but both kind of implied, and there's a belief going around that a long-term extension has been signed or is close to being signed. So it sounds like all of those negotiations are going on right now. That might have also played a factor in LA Knight's recent push. The Fightful Select report noted that they were kind of holding off on a push for him until they get a new deal signed. And apparently this is going to be a 5-year deal and will probably be one of the only signings that they've done here while, this business transaction between Endeavor and WWE is taking place. I think, did they say September 12th? Is that the day that they have on this for the finalization of the sale? So we have 3 days left of a McMahon ran WWE, which is pretty crazy. This is going to be our last podcast in that era, most likely, if I have that date correct anyway. So that makes sense, and it's smart, I think, to sign LA Knight to a 5-year deal based on his age. You don't want to have to do a 3-year deal and have to worry about re-upping him or anything like that. If they're going to push him and they're going to take advantage of the popularity that he has found, he is not a guy that you can drag your feet on. He's just not. He's, I know we've talked about his age. He's not old. He's not too old to do this or anything like that, but he's old enough to where you can't just wait 3 years and see how it goes. You need to sign him, lock him up to a long-term deal now. That way he's here, you've got him, and you can all work together to get him over and get as much money and mileage out of his career while you have the time to do it before he does get too old. And if he does become a hugely over star here and he has a big run, there's a lot he can do after his wrestling career. If this guy hits 50, spends the next 10 years in WWE, he's 50 years old, he's a manager, he's a color commentator, he's anything. He can do so much in the business. But I think maybe with this 5-year deal, they might try to get a Rock or Stone Cold little run out of him. Because think about The Rock and Stone Cold. How long did their runs on top in their peak of popularity really last? 3 to 5 years. That's it. Austin got super over in 97, won the title in 98, had a good 2-year run, got injured, off for a year, came back for about a year and a half, and then had the falling out with Vince McMahon, came back for that final match with The Rock. So his run was 3 to 5 years broken up. Rock, same thing. Won the title in 98, was pretty over by that point, but probably didn't reach his peak of popularity until the following year in 99 or 2000, and then 2001. But then after that, he was off. Mummy returns, came back, put over Brock at SummerSlam, beat Austin at 19, had his final match at 20, and that was it. And that was it. So again, same time period there. So LA Knight, he could essentially kind of have the same type of run here. They did tease a little interaction last night with Paul Heyman on SmackDown, but I feel, we'll talk about SmackDown in a minute, but I feel like, they're putting plans in place to get Cody over there so we can get that big Cody and Roman match at WrestleMania. So I don't know how LA Knight would fit into that, but he could make a good opponent for Roman Reigns before WrestleMania 40, because is LA Knight really going to be the guy to beat Roman Reigns? Probably not, but I'm hoping they can still make a megastar out of him. So giving him a big match with Roman Reigns that he loses wouldn't be a bad thing. Book that match at Survivor Series, book it at the Royal Rumble, something like that. But they definitely teased something with LA Knight and Roman last night with Paul Heyman. And we should also talk about, we're going to talk about the rest of SmackDown in a minute, but since we're talking about LA Knight, let's talk about that receipt that he gave Kevin Nash. Now, it sounds like they're setting up for another match with LA Knight against The Miz. Great, fine. So we're getting that. And LA Knight comes out to the ring and he starts talking about The Miz's music. And this is before he had a match with Austin Theory last night. And he says, let's take a look at your music. It says, I came to play. Now, if I was a complete moron, I would say, let's look at the adjective. But I'm not a complete moron. So I'm going to say, let's look at the verb. Now, that's a direct receipt and a direct shot at Kevin Nash. Awesome, fucking brutal and great. I loved it. Kevin Nash will never live that down from his WCW debut. This is where the big boys play, huh? Look at the adjective, play. And he's been ribbed about that for decades. So that was awesome. I love that little receipt. That's what makes wrestling so great. Now, I saw on the Click This podcast tweeted, rent free. Why is it that whenever somebody talks shit and then gets talked shit back to them, their immediate response is, oh, I'm living rent free. I'm living rent free. No, motherfucker, you're the one that brought it up. You mentioned him first. So how can you be living rent-free in his head when you are the one that brought him up? This was a receipt. It's such a lame comeback, and you see that all the time on Twitter. Somebody's a dick, and then you're a dick back, and they're like, I'm living rent-free in your head. I'm like, no, you're not. You're a fucking fool. And that's a completely unoriginal and stupid response. And Sean Oliver, whoever's running the Click This podcast, should know better. That's not, LA Knight's receipt does not mean that you're living rent-free in his head. It means here's a receipt. Haven't you ever heard of those? They've existed since the beginning of time in wrestling. It's the very equivalent. It's the wrestling equivalent of fuck around, find out. You get a receipt. You get potatoed, you get a potato back in the next match. You get a stiff chair shot, you got a receipt coming. And that can pertain to verbal as well. And we've seen a lot of receipts in the CM Punk and Elite drama over the past 15 or 16 months as well, haven't we? So that's all this was. This was LA Knight's response to Kevin Nash. But on top of that, this is all in good fun. The fans shouldn't be mad about this. The fans shouldn't be offended about this. Who is one of Kevin Nash's best friends? The guy that probably greenlit that line for LA Knight to say. It's all in good fun. Oh, he's like, LA Knight probably went up to Triple H, hey, I'm going to insult your friend tonight. You cool with that? Oh, fuck yeah, man. Go for it. Light him up. As a matter of fact, he hates being ribbed for that adjective shit. Just go say something about that. Triple H probably is totally fine with this. It's all in good fun. That's all it is. So, of course, this was all stemming from Kevin Nash, for those who don't know, on his podcast, just talked about LA Knight and said that he saw him as a Stone Cold and Rock ripoff, and then in the very same breath said that he'd only seen him one time. So to me, that was not really an insult either. You know, I think LA Knight's receipt was pretty stiff, considering what Nash said was probably the same thing that anybody would say who's looking at LA Knight for the first time. If that's the first time your eyes ever see him, and you hear what he says and you see his mannerisms and hear how he talks, he's going to remind you of Steve Austin or The Rock or something like that. That's what he's going to remind you of. So it's a completely fair take. But I think maybe Nash used the word ripoff. And I think if he wouldn't have used the word ripoff, if he would have just said he seems influenced by instead of he's ripping off, then it's probably a non-story. But he had to use the word ripoff for a guy that he saw one time and one time only. You know, where if you know LA Knight's work and you see more of him, you might realize that he's heavily influenced by, but he's not ripping anybody off. And there's a difference. And so LA Knight gave him a receipt there. And that, of course, means Nash is living rent-free in his head. I don't think that's what it means. I think it's awesome that he got a receipt last night. And way to go, LA Knight. We expect more of that from you. You got to talk trash if you want to be the best. So LA Knight, once this contract is officially signed, this long-term deal, I can't see anything that would make this fall through. You know, is LA Knight really going to say, oh no, I want to see it run. I want it to run out and maybe I can test my luck in AEW. It sounds like WWE is willing to push him and willing to capitalize on his popularity. Leaving the company, resetting, re-debuting in another company with a completely new name and music and all that shit again, you're going to burn out your momentum. So I don't feel like, even though I don't think any confirmation of a contract extension has officially been announced, I feel like it's definitely going to happen if it has not yet already. I believe the reports that it's a done deal, and we should now start seeing them take advantage of that contract and that money that they are now paying to this man. If they're going to be paying him superstar money, you want to get superstar mileage out of him. So we should start seeing him in bigger things. And I think that little tease with Paul Heyman last night was an indicator that something, or maybe a title shot, is coming up for him in the future, because he could totally have a match with Roman and lose or get fucked or screwed over or whatever. Of course, the fans and their attention span of a goddamn gerbil are going to think that he was buried or, oh, WWE refuses to pull the trigger. And I'm like, it's not going to be that. I think the plan is for Roman and Cody, but there's nothing wrong with getting LA Knight in the title picture now. Cody lost at WrestleMania 39. He wasn't buried. He's going to turn around and win the title at WrestleMania 40. So LA Knight can do the same thing. LA Knight and Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble. LA Knight and Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble. LA Knight loses, gets fucked over, Samoan spiked by Solo, or just flat out loses but lives to fight another day. There is nothing wrong with that. Plus, then Roman can go to Mania, drop it to Cody, unless LA Knight's popularity becomes so huge that he leapfrogs Cody. But I still think Cody and Roman is going to be the plan. You can still revisit LA Knight down the road, and LA Knight can probably get to the world title once Roman's run is over. Because, we might be booking Gunther and Seth Rollins. I don't even want to wait until WrestleMania. I think Gunther and Rollins should happen before then. So there's room for LA Knight to be involved in the world title, but I don't think it's realistic that he wins a world title until sometime next year after WrestleMania. But there's nothing wrong with getting him involved now, and I don't think a loss to Roman Reigns would hurt him. He's in the ring with Roman Reigns. He's in the ring with the top star in the company, the biggest star in many, many years in the WWE, and a guy that's setting records with his title run. Putting LA Knight in a feud with him, if he loses, is not bad. And I just already know how fans are, and they're going to think that it is. If LA Knight has a match and they book it with Roman Reigns, you know what they're going to say. They got to put him over. I'm like, we can't put everybody over. Somebody's got to be the person to beat Roman, and I think that story goes to Cody. So if you do the match before then, Roman's going to have to survive LA Knight, but you can book these matches in such a way to where, not only does it not harm the loser, it might elevate them, similar to what we saw from Orange Cassidy against Jon Moxley. And I think LA Knight needs one of those outings, because as good as LA Knight is he might have Rock and Stone Cold vibes on the mic, but he doesn't have Kurt Angle and Bret Hart vibes in the ring. You know what I mean? So I think he needs a good outing. He's not bad in the ring at all, but I think he really needs a good main event top title match just to show that he can perform on that level. Even in a losing effort or whatever, I think he needs that match. I think he needs that for his legacy, his career, his experience in the company going to that main event. I think he needs some of those losses. Look at the losses that Austin took to Bret before he got there. Look at the losses that Benoit took to Angle before he got there. So there's examples of this littered all throughout history. So if you do a match with LA Knight and Roman Reigns before WrestleMania 40, LA Knight's going to lose. Sorry. But the championship could be on LA Knight's future next year in 2024 after WrestleMania, after hopefully Roman Reigns' reign comes to an end, which if it does, they are going to be booking one of the most predictable WrestleMania main events ever, with Cody and Roman Reigns. As much as I want to see Cody win, the way the Bloodline storyline has really fallen off the edge here really makes me wish they just would have done it at WrestleMania this year, because I think the Bloodline has, in fact, long since jumped that shark, and I think MJF and Adam Cole is now more interesting than the Bloodline. It is. I mean, overall, the Bloodline is still top 3 storylines maybe of all time. But currently where they both sit, MJF and Cole gets the nod with Greg anyway. But we're going to be talking about Smackdown in a moment. Last night, yesterday, they held their Superstar Spectacle in India. And I was all confused. I thought this was going to be some big, massive show and they were going to have to tape Smackdown. They just sent a small crew over there. One of the people that was supposed to be on the show, I believe, was Becky Lynch. She was supposed to take on Zoe Stark, but her passport had a tear in it, and she was not allowed to travel overseas, so she couldn't make the show. She issued an apology to the fans for not being able to be there. That's a shame. In her place was Natalya, who wound up defeating Zoe Stark. We had Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens defeating Indus Sher. I saw a couple of cool videos from Sami Zayn on social media from some of his travels and going through the streets of India. Very cool. He loves that type of stuff. Braun Breaker defeated Odyssey Jones. And in the main event, it was Seth Rollins and John Cena defeating Imperium. So pretty good little card there. Sounds like the fans there had a blast. And we also had a segment with the Great Khali where he came out and said that his career is not over and he can have one more match, or he feels like he can have one more match. Well, if Great Khali is available for one more match, I think there's really only one option. And that's an Iron Man match with Carmelo Hayes. I don't know what other match you would do. I mean, fans have been calling for the Great Khali and Carmelo Hayes to have an Iron Man match for the past 5 years. So you finally get a chance to do it now. I think you got to pull the trigger. So keep a lookout for that. Khali and Carmelo Iron Man match. I'm ready for it. We have a wrestling death to report, kind of a sad one. Rest in peace to General Adnan, old Billy White Wolf, former co-holder of the WWE Tag Team Championships with Chief Jay Strongbow back in the day. I remember him most from AWA. He spent the better part of a decade in the AWA, primarily as a manager, but a little bit as a wrestler before he had to retire, and spent most of the 80s there. And then he is the manager of Jerry Blackwell, and that's when they made him the Ayatollah or whatever, of Blackwell, and he had the headdress and everything, and they were capitalizing on the same thing that WWE was capitalizing on with the Iron Sheik and everything in the 80s. But then he would resurface and come back to WWE in 91 with Sergeant Slaughter and his Triangle of Terror, as Vince McMahon used to call it. And they already brought back the Iron Sheik to be Colonel Mustafa, which I always thought was a trip, because as a kid, I'm like, are they trying to tell me that this Colonel Mustafa is not the Iron Sheik? Because it felt like that's kind of what they were doing. Like they were trying to make you think that you don't recognize him. You don't recognize those boots and that mustache and that fucking head. But finally they started acknowledging his past. But they never really did that with General Adnan, but he did make a lot of sense to come in. He's the perfect person to round out that trio. And he actually did work a SummerSlam match. He was in that handicap match against Hogan and Warrior. So, and I think he even wrestled one-on-one with Hogan. I think leading up to WrestleMania 7, there was a one-on-one match with General Adnan and Hogan. So he would get back in the ring a little bit after he retired. But he passed away. I believe he was 84. I didn't write down the age there, but yeah, I have several different memories of him growing up. And of course, my last being in the early 90s there with Sergeant Slaughter. So rest in peace to General Adnan. We had another wrestling death today as well, the brother of Buzz Sawyer. Brett Wayne Sawyer passed away. And I am seeing a headline here that apparently Hacksaw Jim Duggan has undergone emergency surgery, but I don't know anything else about it. So best of luck to Hacksaw, whatever's going on with him. And yeah, rest in peace to General Adnan. We also have some information on the Authors of Pain. We've heard the Authors of Pain's name come up a couple of times within the past year. And last year, I think it was Fightful that had reported that WWE has interest in bringing them back. Well, apparently, they have been secretly signed with the company all the way since last year. They've been booked for travel a couple of times, and for whatever reason, WWE has not brought them back or re-debuted them. The reports are suggesting that Paul Ellering was involved in these negotiations. So Ellering is only 70. I looked up his age today. I was curious how old he is because I love him, and Rachel is doing well. And if they brought him back in with them, I loved them. I thought they were a great act. I was bummed out when they got released. So Authors of Pain have been re-signed for a while. Not sure what they're waiting for, if they're waiting for a creative idea, or if they might come in as part of another group. We had some teasing of faction warfare last night with Lashley and his crew, whatever the hell they're going to be called, and the Judgment Day and the Bloodline. Maybe Authors of Pain come in to be a part of this. Back in the day, we talked about Roman Reigns starting a Roman Empire, remember, with Authors of Pain, kind of a new Shield type of thing. Maybe AOP can back up the Bloodline in some respect, but then they wouldn't be the Bloodline anymore. So I don't know. But Authors of Pain apparently have been back with the company for a year, and they have not been used yet. So they're getting the old Lanny Poffo WCW deal. Good for them. So we'll see whenever they re-debut in the company. Looking forward to it. Let's talk about a little bit of TV this week. We had some interesting things take place on WWE and AEW television. And we're going to start with Raw, and we got to start with Gunther. Let me answer this super chatty real quick from our friend Spectra. Thanks for the 5, dude. Who should dethrone each current AEW champion? I like Cole dethroning MJF. Also, I feel like Mox could be dethroned by Miro. That could be money. I love both of those ideas. I want Toni Storm based on the awesome character that she's been portraying lately, which is just terrific. I want her to beat Saraya for the title. I personally think that Toni Storm is the most capable and the best women's star AEW has. I think she is the one that can be their top star. I think she has the best in all departments. She's better in every category than every other woman there. Ring, mic work, look, all that stuff. She's great. She's great. She's a main event player. She is. And I like Toni Storm a lot. And I really like your idea for Miro and Mox. I'd be totally into that, especially if Miro and Mox have some crazy encounter. And that could be great if you could get to that before you do a Miro Hobbs blow off, and then Miro beats Mox, and then Hobbs beats Miro for that championship. But then you're hot potato in the belt, and I feel like Mox should have a healthy run. But I like the Miro idea as well. Let's talk about TV. We're going to start with Raw, then we'll hit NXT, then we will hit last night's SmackDown, then we will finish up with some AEW stuff. And I want to talk about our friend Gunther. On Monday Night Raw this past Monday, I was not home to watch the show on Labor Day. I was having dinner with my family. It was my birthday dinner that night with my family, so I missed Raw, but I did catch the Gunther and Chad Gable main event. The only bad part about this match, and it was a terrific, really fun main event that was heavily praised by all. One problem, though, apparently they had some really shitty commercial breaks late in the match that was poorly timed. And this match should have been given much more time. This should have been a pay-per-view match. And it does sound like they might be doing what I've been suggesting the whole time between these two, of have a series of matches. I guess this was considered the third match. I forgot that they had one previously. So I think they were considering this Gunther Gable 3. But I was hoping for a trilogy, with the first match, the one that we just saw where Gable won by countout. And then the next match be on pay-per-view where Gable gives Gunther the fight of his life, but Gunther barely escapes with the title. Then he breaks Honky's record. Then you book the third match where Gable wins. I might not be far off from that scenario because I had this match happening at Payback. They did it on Raw instead. So the dates of these matches is going to vary, but my overall idea of Gable being the one to actually dethrone Gunther might actually happen. But before Gable dethrones Gunther, we got to talk about Gunther dethroning Honky. It's happened. It's happened. Like, you guys got to see it. You guys got to live through it with me. I've talked about this before. I mean, there's probably not a ton of fans out there that can say they were sitting on their living room floor, just casually eating a snack, watching Honky Tonk Man challenge Ricky Steamboat for the Intercontinental title. Just 2 months after Ricky Steamboat beats Randy Savage in what was considered the greatest match of all time at the time, at WrestleMania 3, I'm thinking Ricky's got a long, healthy run ahead of him. And the last person that's going to beat him is fucking Elvis. So I'm just sitting there chilling. And next thing I know, there's a wonky-ass roll-up over on the ropes. And Honky's got his arm on the ropes. And Steamboat gets pinned. Honky cheats, wins the Intercontinental title. My mouth drops. Jimmy Hart scurries off with Honky. They go celebrate with the heels. Jimmy Hart now manages the Hart Foundation, the tag team champions, and the Intercontinental champion. In 1987, that was a big deal. And I'm like, what the hell happened? It's probably the maddest I've ever been in my life at a match finish. And it's bothered me for 36 years. 36 years and 3 months, or whatever it's been, since that happened. And I've had to live with Honky Tonk Man being the longest reigning Intercontinental champion ever. So not only was it a match finish and a championship victory that made me the most mad I had ever been as a Mark fan, but then I had to live with him being the longest running champion. And I have nothing personal against Honky. Honky's a great wrestling character, just like Brutus the Barber Beefcake was, just like Hacksaw Jim Duggan was. Best of luck to Hacksaw. Apparently some emergency surgery went down today. So was the Big Boss Man. A lot of great characters who were all great wrestlers. But none of these people should be holding a record like that on a championship that has been around the waist of Pedro's, of Savage's, of Brett's, of Perfect's, of Shawn's. Think about the names that have held that title, the workhorse title that it was considered to be. And the guy that holds it the longest is the opposite of the identity that the championship seemed to have for so many years. And I always thought that was weird. And I can't believe we went through so many years where that record just wasn't going to be broken. And it was going to be impossible during the Attitude Era, because championship runs with all the titles were happening every day. Do you know how many times I saw the tag team titles, the world title, and the intercontinental title change hands in about 5-year span there where I was really hardcore going to shows? A bunch of times. And they would have multiple changes a month in some cases. So there was no way we were going to see a 16-month or whatever it is intercontinental title run around that time. And then we get into the 2000s. Maybe there's a chance, but nobody ever comes close. So all the way back in January, about Royal Rumble time, I think it's the first time I brought it up on this podcast, I said, as much as I would like to see Sheamus go into WrestleMania and beat Gunther for the Intercontinental title, the idea, the prospect of Gunther going just a few more months and being the guy to break Honky's record, when you think about wrestlers, when you think about people in the company, guys with the biggest, brightest futures, guys who are legit, if there has ever been a name that should be the person to break Honky's record, Gunther is the guy. Gunther is a guy that the WWE can be proud is the new guy to hold this record. And it's so glorious to me, and it just makes me feel so good because he's such a different name. He's such a different type of wrestler than the Honky Tonk Man. He has restored value to the Intercontinental title. And you guys know how disgusted I am with the physical belt. I miss that sumbitch that's hanging up on the wall back there. I miss the one that Honky carried. I miss the old one. But Gunther has made me almost forget about that because of how magnificent he's been, how dominant he's been, and how he really, as a fan, makes you realize that this guy's the real deal. And if we are looking for that next Roman, if we are looking for that next Brock, who knows if we will ever find that or not, but we got one hell of a chance in Gunther. Absolutely. And I think now should be the time where he drops it to Chad Gable. And maybe Gable's got to work his way back up because Gunther did beat him clean on Raw. But there was a digital exclusive that was revealed or that was released from WWE. I saw it on their YouTube channel. It's probably everywhere, where Chad Gable is backstage in the locker room and he's swearing to God, I swear I'm going to take that title from him. He is not done with Gunther. He made it clear. He even, said all the joking and stuff aside, that stuff gets old. At some point, it's time to get serious. And he seems very, very focused. The camera shot of his kids crying after the loss, all that, to me has been signifying that he actually probably will get to be the guy to take the title off of Gunther. And I hope he is. I've been calling for it for weeks. But now that we've had Gunther surpass Honky Tonk Man, you can do it at any time. And maybe you can even delay it, if Gunther's like, I'm not giving you another shot, I already beat you. And then Gable's got to do some things. They stretch it out. He's got to do some shit to earn another shot. And then he finally gets it. You could do it at Fastlane. You could do it at Survivor Series. You could do it at the Royal Rumble. I wouldn't wait until WrestleMania. I feel like Gunther's has to be moved on to something bigger and better by that point. But it would be, you'd kill two birds with one stone if you do one more final match. And then you can even have Gunther say, okay, fine, but if I beat you, you never get a shot at this title again. And then Gable can be like, okay, fine. And then you do one final match to where Gable is able to beat somebody that's been so dominant and unstoppable and is clearly going to be going on to do major shit in the company. You now make Gable with that victory, and that gives Gunther now the freedom, without the weight of the Intercontinental title holding him back, to float up to a higher point on the roster. And he was the runner-up in the Royal Rumble last year. Maybe he wins it this year. And who knows? Somehow challenges Seth Rollins. I don't know how you don't do Gunther and Roman. But I have pitched several times because of the history of unconventional main events during all the 10s. WrestleMania 1 was the crazy tag match. WrestleMania 10, you kind of had the two main events. WrestleMania 20, you had a triple threat. And WrestleMania 30, you had a triple threat. What if you had a triple threat at WrestleMania 40? Because Cody and Roman would be predictable. Would it not be? Cody's got to win that one, right? So I don't think there's going to be too many fans that are going to be surprised if Cody wins the title against Roman. You chuck Gunther in there, and that changes the whole dynamic. So they could do that. Maybe it's a triple threat. But either way, Gunther moving on to the world title after this seems very, very likely. And maybe he has a match with Seth Rollins at the Royal Rumble. Maybe Gunther isn't even in the Royal Rumble. Maybe he's challenging for the championship, something like that. But before the year is out, I think having the rematch, the final match with Chad Gable, put it on pay-per-view so commercials don't fuck it up, and just make it and give them time to make it one of the greatest Intercontinental Championship matches of all time. Thus, even helping restore more value to the championship. Having matches like this that are going to be mentioned in the same breath as Steamboat and Savage, or Brett and Perfect, or other great Intercontinental title battles, and the fact that you're able to have matches in this time period, in this era, that rivals those or are going to be mentioned in the same breath as those, not only helps the championship, but it helps the wrestlers in the match. It boosts both of their legacies. And we all know Chad Gable is the closest thing we're ever going to see to a Kurt Angle, just like Gunther is the closest thing we're ever going to see to a Brock or a Roman, I think, at least in terms of the crop that we currently have. So push these guys, Gable and Gunther. I feel like they can have like a Gunther and Dragunov type of match to where it's just fucking brutal. But in the end, Gable beats him and wins the Intercontinental title, and he would earn it. It would be amazing, and that's what I would like to see. But before we get to that point, Gunther has an Intercontinental Championship celebration this Monday on Raw, where he will celebrate becoming the longest running Intercontinental Champion ever. We will see who interrupts him. Maybe they bring in Honky Tonk Man to get his ass kicked, who knows? Or maybe Gable comes out during the celebration and demands one more match, and they just book that for Fastlane. I feel like that's a possibility. We could see that on Monday night, but congratulations to Gunther. It has made me so happy to see someone not only break Honky Tonk Man's record, but someone that I love so much. Like, I am all about Gunther. I am Team Gunther. So the fact that it's him and that accolade now goes to an Intercontinental Champion that a wrestling fan can be proud of. Like I said, nothing against Honky. It's just, he was just one of those WWE 80s characters that just should not be the guy to be the longest holder of this specific championship belt. I thought it was ludicrous, and it took us 36 years to break that record. Good luck breaking this one. I think these days with Triple H in charge of creative, longer title runs are going to be more common. So I think that there's a chance that this could be broken sometime in the future, but I would not rush it, provided, unless Gunther has a bad falling out with WWE, unless he chokes out Triple H backstage and walks out on a pay-per-view before has a match and he's the champion or something like that, then I think they would immediately put the belt on somebody and take that record away from him. That's why they kind of fast-tracked Randy Orton. I'll always believe that. I think the only reason he beat Chris Benoit at SummerSlam 2004 was so Brock Lesnar would no longer be the youngest world champion in WWE history. Still the youngest WWE, but Orton winning the world title allowed WWE to say that Orton was the youngest champion, and it was just out of spite. So other than something like that happening, I can't see anybody taking this record away from Gunther, maybe until I'm dead. Because if it's another 36 years, that'll put me at 82. If this record stands as long as Honky's did, it's going to be old mic work up here at 82 years old. Well, my little Metamucil on the rocks, sipping it with a trembly ass hand. That'll be me. Probably not who know what my name is, but y'all will still be here, right? You guys will all still be subscribers and members. Thanks. Anyway, Raw was great on Monday with the Gunther and Gable match. We also had a very beautiful reunion with Sami Zayn and Jey Uso reuniting in the ring. Sami said, "I'm glad you're here." They had a hug. Owens wasn't on the show, and I had said right the same day that Jey Uso quit on SmackDown, I tweeted that what they should do with Jey is just move him over to Raw, because that way it would buy some time. If your plan is to do Jimmy and Jey at WrestleMania, putting Jey on Raw would buy you the time to do that. They did the same thing with Rey Mysterio and Dominic last year or this year. So if you do that, Jey still has a lot of story to tell there. And one of the things I said in that very same tweet was that putting Jey on Raw could make Owens uneasy. He's already a little high strung as it is, and I don't think Jey's presence there is going to make him feel very comfortable. And now I thought that could lead to Sami and Owens dropping the belts, but they've already dropped the belts, and now Jey is there, which means that's going to tie into issues between Owens and Sami. Jey will be in the middle of that. Cody might even try to play peacemaker, who knows? And that will kind of keep Jey busy until they revisit Jey and Jimmy for WrestleMania and maybe kick something off between the two of them at the Rumble. They'll probably both be in the Rumble, and there'll be a face-off between them, something like that. One of them will eliminate the other, or they will eliminate each other. Hopefully they won't do that trope, because that's a little uncreative, I guess. But hopefully it won't be like Jey eliminates Jimmy, and then Jimmy shows up later and eliminates Jey, and they brawl into the crowd, and then that sets up their Mania program. Something like that. Hopefully they can be a little bit more creative, because the Bloodline segment has not been that interesting. But anyway, also on Raw, that's where we heard Adam Pearce for the first time say and confirm what we all kind of suspected about Jey Uso coming to Raw. He said that SmackDown will be getting someone. Like, basically there was a trade. And on SmackDown last night, Paul Heyman was even inquiring to Pearce about who is going to be traded. And Pearce is like, oh, we're still working that out, or working out the details. And pretty much from the word go, the fact that Cody at the pay-per-view said, I pulled all of the political strings I had. Michael Cole even saying he used to be an EVP. He knows how to get things done, which was awesome. WWE, is having fun with this whole thing, watching the fire, the shitstorm in AEW. They're kind of sitting back with that gif of Big E and popcorn. That's what they're doing right now. So they're implying that somebody's going to be traded to SmackDown, and most fans have kind of sniffed out right from the start, because of the way they used Cody to introduce Jey, the way Cody specifically went out of his way to say, I cashed in my political chips. That's probably going to lead to them getting Cody to SmackDown, which I guess all I'm looking for is a reason, I guess, that makes sense. And if Jey is going to be main event Jey, you would think SmackDown would need to get a main eventer in return. And that would be a much easier way to get to Cody and Roman, rather than trying to have Cody win the Rumble again. Because like I said, and I've been saying, unless Cody gets to SmackDown somehow, it feels like his only path to Roman would be winning the Rumble, where he can choose his champion. Well, now, if he's on SmackDown, he has a much clearer path to Roman. But again, does putting him on SmackDown really make sense? Because in my mind, I feel like whoever wins the Rumble would pick Roman, right? Like, for example, if Gunther wins the Rumble, even if he's feuding with Seth on Raw at the time, even, unless he has a personal issue with Seth, I just don't see what the motivation would be for any winner of the Rumble to not pick Roman. Because you'd look like a pussy if you don't. Well, he's so dominant, I don't want to fight him. No, you should want to be the one to dethrone him. Everybody should want to be that guy, to be the one that they can say, just like Brock was the one in the 21-1. Somebody gets to be the person that ends the 3.5 plus whatever it's going to be, longer than that by the time we get to Mania. The history-making run of Roman. Somebody gets to be the person to do that. So you would think in kayfabe, the winner of the Rumble is going to say, I want Roman. So you would feel like Cody has got to win the Rumble. But I feel like Gunther should win the Rumble. So I don't know how any of this works. All I can think of is that, because I feel like when it comes to title shots too, they might blur, there might not be a brand thing. Like if they do the Elimination Chamber to determine Roman's challenger, assuming the Rumble winner picked the World Heavyweight Champion to face at Mania, which I can't imagine why they would do that. And then you do the Elimination Chamber match for Roman's belt, but I still feel like that would be Raw and SmackDown people. They would probably mix them all. So putting Cody on SmackDown, I don't know, maybe it helps get him started with Roman a little bit early or get him in the mix in the Bloodline stuff. And it depends on how long they wait to make this announcement. How much longer is Cody going to be on Monday Night Raw before they make this? Are they going to wait until the end of the year? Are they going to wait just another couple of weeks to make this announcement? If they're teasing it on every show, they're not going to tease it on every show for 4 months. They're probably going to announce it pretty quick. So Cody moving over to SmackDown might help at the show right now because Roman currently isn't booked for a whole lot this fall, although John Cena is there. So getting Cody over there now would have him interact with Cena as well. Not that that would matter because Cody's been on SmackDown and Cena's been on Raw, or has he? Or I guess he kind of was with The Miz on Raw, right? The Miz did whip John Cena's ass. We all saw it with our own eyes. And I was pretty surprised that Cena allowed himself to get bitched out that bad by The Miz, but The Miz is a very, very tough hombre, and he put down Cena hard on Monday Night Raw. But we'll see when that announcement is going to be made. I think if most fans know it's going to be Cody, WWE shouldn't drag their feet too much on the surprise because we kind of know. So I guess they'll move him to SmackDown, and then he's at least there. At least he's in the same environment with Roman Reigns. But if you get Cody there too early, then you're booking Cody and Roman at the Rumble or something, and maybe they do it early. Maybe it's not WrestleMania. Maybe it's Cody and Roman for the title, but Cody's defending against Roman. Maybe Cody beats Roman for the title at the Royal Rumble. Roman enters the Royal Rumble mad after he lost, wins it, challenges Cody for the title at WrestleMania 40. Then they do a switcheroo on us. Probably not, but who knows? I feel like they got to do something a little bit less predictable than what they're probably planning. Because I don't feel like if you just do Cody and Roman at Mania, Cody wins. His win isn't going to be any better of a reaction than he would have gotten this year at WrestleMania 39. You know what I mean? Let's talk about NXT. Becky Lynch might in fact be winning that NXT championship. She did a little video challenge to Tiffany Stratton, and they will be facing next week, I think, for the championship. Not sure if Becky Lynch is going to win the title there on TV necessarily, but it might be a schmozz finish where they booked a rematch. But I kind of think they should give Becky Lynch the NXT title. I think that would be something decent for her to do the next few months because they've sent a lot of main roster talent to NXT. It seems to be working out well, having people go there for a quick little stint, couple of months, come back. And Becky winning a championship that she's never won, I think would be kind of cool. Plus, it would give Tiffany a chance to work with somebody like Becky. And in the end, hopefully Tiffany will win the belt back from her if they trade the titles. I kind of hope that we get Dominic dropping the belt back to Lee as well. So we will see. They also did the big spot to close the show where I guess Braun Breaker tried to decapitate Von Wagner, where he had his head laid on the steps and then he picked up the other half of the steps and slammed him down. And then the picture went to black and the show went off the air. There was some fan footage that came out later and a couple of reports. I think one was from bodyslam.net where they said there was some panic backstage that Von Wagner was legitimately hurt. And a couple of the fan footage from the crowd, one of it was a little more shaky, but one of it was pretty definitive. It was a perfectly protected spot. I think it was just executed well in terms of the backstage agents, and Sean, I think, was out there. Everybody kind of surrounding the ring, being all concerned, but it was just a well done, brutal spot, and there was a lot of blood. He was taken out via stretcher. I think all of that was shown on social media, but he was fine, and I think the panic was probably not that real because the spot looked perfectly protected and Von Wagner's kind of over. People really like him. So I personally think they should have done this spot on October 31st, not because it's Halloween and it's bloody, but because it's the day before November. And if Von Wagner is out of commission, he will not be coming on Tuesdays, at least for the month of November. And I think that's for charity. So that's good. What's it called? No November. So yeah, Von Wagner, they should have waited a month to do that spot. But best of luck to him in kayfabe. Hopefully he's doing better I think WWE's released information like they cannot release any details on his progress or his status, because he does have the issue with his head from when he was a kid. So they're playing into all of that. And I guess Braun Breaker is a pretty vicious heel on NXT, but that's all I really know about NXT. But I did watch that spot and thought it was well done. Last night on SmackDown, I got to say, felt like a little bit of a weak show. Not going to talk much about it, but you're definitely feeling like the Bloodline is falling off. It feels like the Bloodline is starting to kind of lose its luster a little bit. It's all about Jey Uso trying to get back into the good graces with the Bloodline. He kind of saved Paul Heyman from an interaction with AJ Styles. It was kind of interesting to see those two interact, knowing that they don't really like each other in real life. And AJ Styles beat Jey Uso in the main event, and it feels like maybe he could be a next challenger for Roman Reigns. If Roman Reigns needs some challengers before he gets into Mania season, if he's even going to be around. I don't think he's going to be at Fastlane, but if he needs something to do in October or whatever they do at Survivor Series, he might need an opponent here, and maybe AJ can be that guy. Maybe. We also saw Damian Priest and Finn Balor. Now that they're the tag team champions, they can appear on SmackDown. They beat Butch and Ridge Holland in a tag team match. After the match, Lashley and the Street Profits came out and had a little face-off with them. That was real nice. I really liked that. And then in the main event of AJ Styles and Jey Uso, Priest and Balor showed up there and grabbed AJ after the match and threw him in the ring, where a waiting Solo Sikoa nailed him with a Samoan spike. So you got some Bloodline, you got some Judgment Day, and you've got Bobby Lashley's new Hurt Business. You might be doing a 3-way War Games match or something like that. They might be setting something like that up here for Survivor Series. So I'm intrigued by that. I think that's very cool if they wind up doing that. But in terms of the Bloodline, I feel like SummerSlam was the point where everybody was like, okay, now it feels like they failed on 3 triggers. They didn't do Sammy. They didn't do Cody. They didn't do Jimmy. WrestleMania 40, Cody is going to be great and everything, but now you've waited too long and this thing is going to burn itself out instead of ending on a high note, which I think it would have had, Cody won the title at Mania, and then Roman, all of the issues he's going to have with the Usos because of that loss and their loss of the tag team championships, and the Bloodline crumbling around those WrestleMania losses wouldn't have been any less intriguing than what they wound up doing with Roman and Jimmy and Jey and Solo and the whole Bloodline. And now I feel like it's kind of fizzling out to where the fans are getting a little bit soured on it. All of a sudden it's not so fun anymore. And granted, Roman Reigns isn't even really around, but Roman isn't here. Jey is on Monday Night Raw. It's a very different looking Bloodline right now. It's only Solo and Heyman, and Jimmy is kind of on the outside looking in. And the story now is just about Jimmy trying to get back into the good graces somehow, and not really into that as much as I was into some of the other things they have been doing. So the story is just starting to run its course. So this idea that Paul Heyman floated out there about this thing being in the 3rd inning, are you fucking kidding me? This thing's in extra innings at this point. So it's just starting to, become a little bit stale. And Adam Cole and MJF, they're kind of now the big thing, and they have to be careful not to do the same thing. Because I can understand the temptation, from a Triple H standpoint or Tony Khan standpoint, or these wrestling companies, when you see something starting to get over, you don't really want to let it go or end it. But then when you don't have really have a solid conclusion, then you run the risk of not ending it well. TV shows go through the same thing. If you feel like the end is near, end on a high note instead of going into too many seasons to where you're running out of ideas and Joey and Rachel are getting together in a romance, shit like that. So I think they made a mistake there. Maybe they should have found a different way to climax this out, or maybe end this, or maybe have Roman's run end this year. But now they have to go into next year hoping that they execute this properly. And by the time we get to WrestleMania, because it's only September 9th, and we still have 7 months until we get to WrestleMania or more, about 7. So by that point, fans could be really turned off on the Bloodline if nothing gets better here. Like if this doesn't see a resurgence when Roman gets back to TV, if they have a really good segment that kind of breathes new life into the whole thing, maybe. But I think that's going to be tough to do. And then if you get to WrestleMania and the Cody match, maybe by that point the fans are going to be so fed up with the Bloodline, Cody will be cheered like nothing else, because it'll be not only the fans liking Cody, but by that point being so anti-Roman. You know, maybe it's even a level of atmosphere like John Cena felt at One Night Stand in 2006, except on a WrestleMania level. Imagine the entire 70,000+ seat arena booing Dominic Heat down on Roman Reigns because they are so fucking sick of this storyline. We might get to that point, which might in turn make one hell of a moment for Cody Rhodes when he wins the title. So we will see, but I feel like the Bloodline is definitely fallen off a bit. Not as interesting right now, and we'll see if it picks back up when Roman gets to TV. I talked about that LA Knight promo earlier on where he gave Kevin Nash his receipt. That was cool. He did defeat Austin Theory one-on-one during the show, and then after the match, he went backstage and interrupted Paul Heyman when he was talking to Adam Pearce about the Smackdown trade. And Heyman shakes his hand and then tells him, says, "Next time you knock when I'm in here doing business," or something like that. Kind of an offhanded threat. And LA Knight says, "Okay," and just walked off. So just a tease, not much of one, but it was a formal introduction of LA Knight and Paul Heyman, which could imply that LA Knight is now interacting with world champions, top of the card. His push is coming. His push is here, apparently. And maybe he'll get a match, like I said earlier, with Roman Reigns earlier than we are expecting. So SmackDown, just some of the highlights there. Just a so-so show last night. Let's pivot now to AEW, talk a little bit about Dynamite. I loved the MJF and Samoa Joe segment, and Samoa Joe showed that experience really, really does matter, because he really lit up MJF. I love the exchange between the two of them. I think MJF has met one of his matches. Now, MJF has always excelled well when he's in the ring with somebody who can talk. You know, he held his own with CM Punk. He held his own with Samoa Joe too, but barely, because Joe was pretty on point here. Loved the NXT callback, the shove on the aisleway. That was cool. And how they mentioned their history, all of the things talked about in that segment was really great. And now it's looking like maybe that could be our match at Grand Slam, as Samoa Joe is involved in that eliminator. The other big segment on the show that I loved was the program that is now kicked off between Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland. That's going to be all kinds of fun. That was getting heavy praise. We loved it. We were marking out for it here on the live stream. I'm like, this is what we need. Give me this all day, Hangman and Swerve. So they are now headed for a program. That's going to be really good. I'd love to see a couple of matches there. I don't want to see really either guy lose right now, but I think if you book a program, you trade some wins, it can be a lot of fun. And I think Swerve, based on Hangman's demeanor, probably should get that first win, but we will see. If they book that for Grand Slam or whatever they do, they'll probably set it up on Dynamite this week. And they're also finding out who's going to challenge MJF for his world title at Grand Slam in just a couple of weeks. They're doing an eliminator tournament on Dynamite. We had Roderick Strong with the neck brace. I'm loving the graphic with him in the neck brace and the glasses. Hilarious. He defeated Trent to advance, and Darby Allin in the main event, and just a so-so main event, defeated his buddy Nick Wayne to advance. And I also mentioned the Toni Storm stuff. She has been fantastic, throwing the shoe at everybody, and that is how you get a shoe over. Take notes, 1995 WCW Nitro. That's how you make a shoe work. Toni Storm is tremendous. This gimmick, this is how the best ones always get over. When you look throughout history, some of them just kind of happen. You know, these personalities and these gimmicks and characters that just kind of materialize or come out of an idea or happen by accident or happen organically are usually the ones that find the most success. And Storm, I don't know if she had this cooked up in her head beforehand or if she was just trying something out and it really got a lot of praise and they're like, no, run with that. I don't really know, but it's fantastic. She has really found something perfect for her, and I'm loving it. And like I said, I think Toni Storm is the most capable and most talented woman they have on their entire roster. I really think she's big time. So loving everything she's doing. Last night on Rampage, the Eliminator continued with Samoa Joe beating Jeff Hardy one-on-one, and Penta defeated Jay Lethal. So they now both move on, and we are having the semifinals on Collision tonight, which goes live in 26 minutes. So Collision is about to go live. Also last night, something really interesting was that Santana pre-tape segment, that pre-tape vignette return deal that he did, where he basically says he's walking alone. He no longer needs the crutch. He's here to make money, and he has new motivation, a rebirth. Now, this led to a tweet exchange between Santana and Ortiz just a couple of hours before we went live. And Ortiz responded to the video from Rampage, and I quote, he tweets out, "What a way to find out years of having your back meant nothing. Good luck without your crutch. Just remember, it helped you walk for the last 14 plus years. Hope your legs are good. Thank you for being honest for once. But you couldn't say it to my face. You know you still can, right?" And then Santana responds, "Wow, first thing you've said to me in 14 months. No text, no call. No, I hope your recovery has gone well, but of course, paint me to be the bad guy like you've always done. Guess you forgot about our last conversation about this. Either way, I'm happy. I hope and pray the same for you." So we were curious about their personal relationship when they both returned on the same night. And they didn't have a whole lot of personal interaction on that first night. They had some double team moves at the pay-per-view in the Stadium Stampede, but we really weren't sure of their personal relationship. And because we haven't heard of any sort of reconciliation. They had a big falling out. It was not pretty. And now that they're both back, led fans to wonder what the relationship is behind the scenes. So this could be a work, but in AEW, as we've seen, the talent is not afraid to put their personal shit out there. And this one could go either way. And I really, really hope that it's a work, because this is sad. Proud and Powerful was a great act. I loved them in the early days of AEW. It was sad to hear that they had a falling out. It was sad to hear that things went so south between the two. I was hoping that during this past year, over a year now that Santana has been injured, that the two have been able to hash out their problems, hash out their differences, return to TV together with all of that behind them. We were hoping that is the case, or was the case, but it might not be the case unless we see something happen on television. So what I'm hoping now, based on this tweet exchange, I'm hoping that on Wednesday, one of them attacks the other, because that means it's a work. That means they're starting a program, and that means we can all breathe easy that they probably have hashed things out, or at least are on good enough terms to where they can work together professionally. Or unless this is a work shoot thing, unless there is a plan to do a program between the two, and then they're still beefing in real life, but they can put it aside for work purposes. I don't know, but I hope it's a work, because otherwise it's just sad what happened to their relationship too. We're not them. We don't know the nature of it, or who wronged who, or what the issue is. But the fact that two wrestlers that we've known as a team for so long are on bad terms personally, and probably will not be wrestling as a team ever again, is sad. And it's a shame that that happened to their friendship. But best of luck to both of them, putting it behind them and moving on in whatever way they need to. But I'm hoping that that's all a work. I really am. But tonight on Collision goes live here in just a few minutes. We have the Eliminator semis. It's going to be Penta versus Samoa Joe, and Darby Allin versus Roderick Strong. The winner of those two matches will face in the finals on Wednesday's Dynamite, and the winner of that faces MJF the following week, which will be Grand Slam. And then tonight we also have Moxley taking on Action Andretti in an open challenge for the international title, and we have a Chris Statlander open challenge as well. We got BG Gold in 8-man action, and we hear from Danielson, Saraya, and Ruby Soho. So that's on tap for Collision. If you watch it, I hope you enjoy the show. If anything crazy happens on it, hook me up with some tweets about it because I will be chilling at work. So that concludes my notes. I'll cruise over here to the chat and just see what else there is to say. And then I got to bounce out of here because I got a busy night ahead of me. I'm going to knock out a couple of supers. I think at least one. Oh, I think just one. And that comes from our friend, the Juliet. Thank you for being here. Appreciate the 5. Did you watch Sheamus' latest workout with Kathy Kelly? No, but I did see a couple of photos from that. But no, I did not watch it. And yes, thank you, Sean. Gunther officially dethroned Honky as of yesterday. It's been great. It's been a great couple of days for me. I'm so happy. Oh, yeah, AJ and Roman. Good point. AJ and Roman haven't really encountered each other since Roman became the tribal chief. They've had some matches, but it was before. It was before COVID even. So, yeah. I mean, AJ, he's got a couple of more championship main events left in him, I think. AJ's a stud. A match with Roman would be great. Unfortunately, I don't think AJ would win that. He would probably just be used as a vehicle to further more Bloodline story, having Jimmy or Jey or everybody interfere in that. Ultimately, with AJ losing, I'd be fine with that. I don't know, Mongolian Chop. If they did a War Games match with the factions, I don't know if Rhea Ripley would be involved. I would think unless they got Naomi in the Bloodline and then you'd have Bianca. Now, if everybody had a woman, then I would involve them because you could put Bianca with Lashley and Montez and Dawkins, and then you got Rhea with Judgment Day. And then with the Bloodline, you could have Naomi. And then what if you tossed Imperium in the mix and threw in Maxine Dupree, who I love. I just think she's awesome. But I feel like the fact that Kaiser roll guy keeps flirting with her, that maybe he'll woo her to the other side. And so she'll have a weird haircut like his. And she'll become an Imperium member. I think she'd look great in one of those black jumpsuit things or whatever. And she became a part of their group, turning on Ortiz. Because I feel like Gable, might be really starting to get serious here, and maybe that whole thing kind of dissipates, and Maxine turns on Ortiz, joins Imperium, becomes one of them. Everybody would have a woman in their faction, and then you throw them all in a big double cage. Just let them all fight it out to the death. Be awesome stuff. I'd be into it, but yeah, I don't know if in the War Games match that they might do based on the seeds they planted last night, I don't think Ripley would be in there. I think she'd just be in a women's War Games, I guess. I don't know. Not sure how they would work that. Steven Jacobson, good to see you. Hope you're well too. Thank you for chiming in. Thank you to everyone for being here today. But right on. Okay, I think, Max has got LA Knight winning the Rumble, Cody versus Knight versus Roman. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of the same thing as what I was pitching for Gunther, is having a triple threat, which is something that they have done at the last couple of big WrestleManias, 20 and 30. They did that. If they want to make that a decade-long tradition and do that every decade, then you do have a good opportunity to do it this year if you don't want to go the predictable route. Chuck an LA Knight or chuck a Gunther in there and make it a three-way. Then you've got a lot more, what's going to happen? But the only problem with that, Max, is Knight's popularity is so big that if the point is to get Cody over and the point is to make Cody, you're now having him defeat the most popular babyface in the company. You might have a lot of fans that are wanting Knight to win. And the one thing Cody doesn't want, or WWE doesn't want, is for the fans to boo Cody's win. If he goes in there against just Roman, fans are going to be so fucking sick of him and the Bloodline angle, Cody's going to get cheered no matter what. I even think Cody would get a fair amount of cheers if you put Gunther in there, even though the fans love Gunther. They love him in a different way than they love LA Knight. So I think LA Knight would be a bad idea if the plan is for Cody to win. If the plan is for LA Knight to win, then also might take a little bit away from his reaction as well if he's beating Cody, and a lot of fans want Cody. I don't know if I'm splitting the audience in that way. I would have the triple threat be with three guys that where one wouldn't harm the other so much, their presence, you know what I mean? Maybe my only issue with that, but I'm definitely not against a triple threat at all. Thanks. Oh yeah, Juliet. Yeah, Tito's right below me now. Tito, I think, was sitting up there on the table most of the time, but right on. All right, well, that is it for me. I am out of here. Don't forget, we are going to be here tomorrow for WWE Unforgiven 2006 Watch Along. I have not watched this show in years. I barely know anything about the card other than it's John Cena and Edge, right? Ladder match. That's all I really know about it. So tomorrow night will be fun. Join us at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. We'll have whatever the Sunday night NFL game is going to be tomorrow. I'm not sure. We'll have that on the TV over here. We will monitor that, and it should be a hoot. So I will look forward to hanging out with you guys tomorrow night. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and make sure you're here tomorrow for the watch along, and have a great rest of your night and continue to enjoy your